Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and for hitting the like button. If you haven't already, why don't you make this the video that you subscribe to the channel? And please don't forget to hit the like button for the algorithm. It really helps out the channel and would mean a lot to me. The first story is called Should Have Paid Salary. I worked for a really small company straight out of undergrad with about 3 employees and the owner. My degree was in engineering, but I wound up doing procurement, fabrication, welding, machining, shop management, site management, safety, etc. on top of my engineering duties. Overworked and undervalued. I will say that it was a good experience for the rest of my career. Side note to prospective engineers. An engineering degree is among the few where grades in college do matter and significantly affect your prospects for your first job. I choose to not focus entirely on my studies and paid the price with this bad job for 3 years. Onto the compliance. A big part of this job would be that I was out of town on a job site anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks a few times a year. Towards the end of my time with this company, the fact that I knew I was leaving soon, got a business graduate degree now, really empowered me to not back down on a lot of things. Around this time my first child was on the way and sure enough a job was scheduled near the due date. The owner, while he had a lot of shortcomings, understood when I told him I would not be going. However, he refused to keep me on my regular salary while they were gone. There was plenty of work to be done, so it wouldn't have been a vacation. He instead insisted he would pay me on how many units of a certain part I produced while they were gone. Inventory was low and we actually did need the parts. Fine by me, if that's how you want to play it. For the 2 weeks they were gone, I only came in about 4 hours a day, 4 days a week and busted out a ton of these parts. This ended up costing him a substantial bit more to pay me his way, and a lot of other things that I did for the company were put on hold during those weeks. Should have paid me my salary, dude. The next story is called Not Worth It. I, 35 female, live in a big city in Western Europe. After graduating college, I was hired as an office assistant in a big company. Let's call it Happy Place. I did my last internship as a student there, and it went so well that I got hired just a few weeks after getting my master's degree. Over the next 10 years I worked my way up from an assistant to office manager to head of one of the biggest departments. I was not paid a lot of money, but it was above average and the benefits were great. But the main reason I stayed for so long were the people who worked there. Over the year I've made quite a few friends there, and by the year 2020 I was one of the most experienced people working in Happy Place. My colleagues often came to me for advice about how to do this or that, and I had also a great relationship with the big bosses. And the cherry on top was that I had the best boss someone can hope for. Let's call her Maggie. Maggie was 10 years older than me and she was Wonder Woman. She is nice, professional, cool, helpful and has a heart of gold. I've worked with her during my whole time at Happy Place, and for the last 4 years she was my direct supervisor. I loved her. Then, in 2020, a few things happened almost at the same time, and over the course of 6 months, Happy Place turned into Sad Place. First, the company hired a new HR lady, Karen. She was the worst. She treated everyone below her level of responsibilities, which is pretty much 99% of the staff, as if they were lesser people. She talked down to everyone and constantly made changes in the HR policies. She implemented quite a few new rules, which led to us losing some of the benefits that we liked, like free lunches, paid time off to go to the doctor's office during office hours, etc. But the CEO of the company trusted her for some reason, and soon he stopped taking meetings with the staff, making Karen the only person who could make decisions regarding the staff. This meant that no one could actually complain about her, and we slowly started feeling helpless. Maggie was promoted to a different field, the one she actually wanted to work in, so I cannot be mad at her for leaving. And she got replaced by Susan as my new supervisor. Susan was cool, but she was my age and with less experience, which did not make much sense. So even though on paper she was the one in charge, I was the one constantly explaining to her how things worked and what needed to be done while she took the credit. And lastly, 2020. Our line of work was highly impacted by it. So the whole year 2020 I was working under an enormous amount of stress, taking almost no vacation time, doing my job and some of Susan's job and some of my coworkers' jobs. Some colleagues cracked under the tension and quit, but no one got hired to replace them. But despite all of the hard work, I did not receive any related bonus, which was weird, since some of my coworkers let it slip that they got a €1,000 bonus for achievements during 2020. So given all of the events of 2020, in January 2021, I've decided that enough was enough. When it was time for my annual review, I've decided that I would negotiate better conditions for myself. As much as I love my job and the people I've worked for, I couldn't keep working so much for so little pay. As Susan was still on medical leave, Karen was the one who did my annual review, despite the fact that I've only met her a few times and we've never directly worked together. In preparation for the meeting, I've made a list of the things I've been putting up with and a list of reasons why I should get a slight pay bump. I was asking for a 15% pay increase, but was happy to accept a 10%. It was not about the money. It was about knowing that there was at least a chance that management valued me as an employee and that I was not just some sucker who did so much for not even a thank you. After making my case to Karen and carefully explaining to her what my job was and what I was actually doing, I asked her the dreaded question. She looked at me, smiled and said, "I appreciate everything you've been doing for the company and we value you as an employee. But your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much." I was speechless. I admit I was so angry and hurt that I felt tears coming up to my eyes. But I took a deep breath, calmed myself and said, "Thank you for your input, Karen. But I cannot keep working in these conditions. It's not worth it." Karen rolled her eyes and replied, "Then you can quit, but I will be sorry to see you go." And quit I did. You see, there were two things Karen did not know. First, as I explained, I was a highly valued employee with a great reputation and over 10 years of experience in the field. In our field, reputation is important, and for the last 2 years I've been receiving job offers from competitors. I always refused because I loved working for Happy Place. But since the events of 2020, I started taking interviews, checking what else was out there. And just before my meeting with Karen, I did an interview with Cool Company, who offered me a 60% raise to do the same job as I did for Happy Place. Second, remember how I said I took almost no vacation days in 2020? So by January of 2021, I had over 2 months of paid leave available. I checked with HR, not Karen, the week before my annual review, and they confirmed to me in writing that I was free to take my vacation days whenever I wanted. So I did exactly what Karen told me to do. I quit. I put in my 2 months notice and took my 2 months vacation, which meant that I came to work for only 1 day to clean out my office and say goodbye before leaving for good. I felt bad because I left so many of my colleagues in a really bad position since they now had to do my job. But they all assured me that they understood and that they would have done the same thing. After my 2 months of paid vacation, I started working at Cool Company and I've been here ever since. I kept in touch with a few friends from Happy Place and they regularly informed me of what was going on over there. It seems that my quitting was the push that many of my coworkers needed to also make the final leap and quit. As I said, the conditions went from great to bad since Karen took office. Also, the fact that I quit so abruptly got the attention of the CEO, as we had a good relationship. He asked Maggie, who was aware of the whole story with Karen, about it, and she told him the truth. About me not getting the bonus, about Karen speaking down to staff members, about her telling me to quit if I wanted to. The CEO finally opened his eyes and launched an investigation into Karen's actions. He personally did interviews with some staff members and heard stories about her from people from many different departments. He also investigated the bonus story and it turns out she only gave the bonus to her friends from different departments and a very generous one to herself. Plus, since I've quit, no one was actually able to do my job and the fact that Karen was responsible for me leaving made her responsible for the consequences. So after reviewing everything, the CEO decided to terminate Karen's contract. Rumor has it that the whole staff of Happy Place celebrated this joyous occasion. The cherry on top. Last week, my boss at Cool Company walked into my office and said, "You know, Jen from HR is retiring soon, right? We did interviews to replace her, and one of the candidates is Karen. She seems competent but asks for quite a lot of money. You and she work together, right? What's she like? Do you think she deserves to be paid more than we initially offered?" I said, "Boss, you have a few minutes? Great, let me tell you a story." After hearing my very honest opinion of Karen, the bossman laughed and said, "Okay, good to know. I think we will tell her that she is not the right fit for us. Thanks." As soon as bossman left my office, I sent an email to my friend Laurie from HR, who was in charge of replying to candidates. I also told her the story and asked her to keep me informed if there's any development with the whole Karen applies to Cool Company thing. A few hours later, I got an email from Laurie. Turns out she copied me to her official reply to Karen. It read, "Dear Karen, thank you for your interest in working for Cool Company. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that in our opinion, your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much. I brought Laurie a big chocolate cookie the next day. The last story is called Get the Machine Running. I worked at a factory that I absolutely loved. I loved the boss, and my manager, now called Head Jerk, really knew his work and would teach anyone that showed enthusiasm. But then the company merged and we suddenly had in my section 3 managers trying to prove their worth, who all turned into massive jerks. The place quickly turned into every man for himself. For example, the 10 minutes I spent patching up a coworker before he went to the hospital came at the cost of being screamed at, then forced to stay back to make up for my timesheets being out. And while my section needed 5 people to run, the way they managed it, people walked out and it came down to me alone. I would have 3 different managers come to yell at me, but not help or hire people to do the work. Seriously, it was crazy how fast they would come in, scream and run out. I was desperate to quit, but living paycheck to paycheck, things were brutally hard. My role was to run a CNC router, but had to run 2 of them as I'm now alone. Complete the parts and get it ready to send to the customer. Often, from start to ship, my parts are only handled by me. This is not normal. Normally, you would have someone to help complete the parts. As I'm alone, I have to keep up with the machine, and makes sense to have the machine off at times during the day while I get things completed. You could expect a screaming if the place was messy at the end of the day. I mean ballistic screaming. Now for the story. Keep in mind this happened over 15 years ago. I had machined a stack of parts and there was no way I could in my right mind make more parts until I had done the post-processing and had these parts ready to be shipped. There were things that had to be sent that day. My old manager comes to me and screams, "Why aren't the machines running?" I'm really behind on this end. Why aren't the machines running? This is really urgent. Let me get this part sent and I can run the machines after I finish this. He started to get even angrier. Get the freaking machines running. He starts berating me and saying that the post-processing wasn't important and running the machine was the most important. And that I had to keep the machines running, no matter what. And that post-processing can be done by anyone in the factory, but I'm the only one who can run the machines, so I have to run them and keep them running, no matter what. Cue malicious compliance. For the entire week I did exactly what he asked. I ran both machines. I would load the programs for the next job while the machine was still running its existing job. Tool holders were lined up and ready to go. While the machines are running, I would sprint from the machines to the material racks to get the materials I needed for the next job ready. I ran those machines non-stop. I did 0 post-processing as I did not have a spare minute. Nothing was finished to the stage where it could be shipped. There wasn't even time for breaks. I made sure those machines ran without a minute of downtime. By the end of the week I had machined so many parts that I had filled up 3 massive workbenches. These benches were something like 3 meters times 1.5 meters long, and I just kept stacking the piles as high as I could. The best thing is that the urgent work is now on the bottom of the pile and the work due next week was on top. This is literally hundreds of different customers' orders. I don't remember the hours I pulled at this exact time, but I have done shifts such as 6 AM to 10 PM and 7 AM to 11 PM. 80-hour weeks without overtime pay were usual for me. When it finally hit the fan about work not being sent out, the head jerk had to come and talk to me, and you could see something snap in his head while he was trying to talk to me. Sorry, not now, I have to run the machine. I just ignored him and kept setting up the next job. Stop, just stop. He starts by trying to ask where a certain job is, and I'm just gesturing. It's under there, man. I swear you could see him dying inside. He starts berating me on how there is no point turning the machines on at all unless the work is completed all the way and sent. He really got stuck into me, but then he's like, just leave the machine off for now and start completing these jobs. But then we both start on completing different parts and within a minute he sees me and instantly, get the machines running. I think it's here when he realized that it's all his fault. As I'm walking back to the machine, I swear he looks up to the roof, screams, and it's as if his soul left his body. He yells at me, leave it off. And as I start finishing parts again, he looks at me and he's about to say the line again. But instead looks up at the roof and screams again. It was like every time he saw me, he wanted to say it. He lasted maybe 10 minutes before he couldn't take it anymore. He storms off and sends someone over to help. But all the urgent work was buried deep. We had to complete non-urgent work first to get it out of the way so that we could find it. And guess who suddenly left work on time every day and stopped working weekends? In short, with people helping me, it took over 2 weeks to catch up and clear the backlog. Those urgent parts were at least 2 weeks late. It took a lot longer for the schedule to return to normal. And now it's your time to shine. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories? In today's video, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.